Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. We have got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. It's just me today for you. So, a little bit of a solo episode here. It's going to be a football episode, and we're looking forward to talking about some good football stuff. Do want to remind you to subscribe to the channel. We do appreciate that. Also, like this video if you're watching on YouTube. And as always, comment. Let me know what you think. I love interacting with you guys, getting your thoughts. Sometimes if you tell me something that maybe I did in the video you didn't like, somebody told me the other day, you had a spelling error here. And it helps me improve. It helps me get better. So if at any point in time you have something that isn't just about the content, but you want something to be better at the show, just let me know, because I think I want to improve and I want to give you guys the best possible show for you to watch and cover the Big Ten as best as I possibly can. I know there's a lot of critiques out there about sometimes I cover certain teams one way or certain teams another way. I do my best to cover as best I possibly can, and if you feel like I'm biased, it is what it is. I think everybody has some bias in them, and it's impossible to say nobody has any bias. So I do my best to try to stay fair, but I'm sure no matter what I say, somebody's gonna have a problem with it. Anyway, let's go ahead and start with our first topic, which this one will have no controversy at all. The NCAA hits Jim Harbaugh with a show cause penalty for violating head coach responsibility rules. Now, if you follow me on social media, I alluded to this a little bit when I was looking back at the Louisville Cardinals case when their national championship was removed in basketball in 2011, I believe it was, or 2013, one of those two. Their national championship was removed. Rick Pitino got hit with a head coach responsibility rules issue, and that's one of the reasons. Obviously, there were much more reasons. We don't need to get into all those. That was taken away from the team. The national championship was vacated. So I'm going to give my thoughts on this situation, what it means for Michigan. I'm not really going to talk about Jim Harbaugh. He's gone. Who cares? I'm just talking about Michigan and what this means for them. If we're talking about what this means for Michigan, this is great news for Michigan. This is exactly what Michigan wants. All right. I know that Michigan fans have they think very well of Jim Harbaugh, and they want Jim Harbaugh to do well. But at the end of the day, you want your school to do well before anybody else. And honestly, this punishment does nothing to Jim Harbaugh. This is another NCAA punishment that does nothing. And really, they couldn't do anything to him here because he's gone. Now, if the NFL decides to follow suit like they did with Jim Tressel back in, 2012, 2013, 2011, whatever, back then, around the same time as this Louisville situation, if they decide to suspend Jim Harbaugh, then it could do something to him. But still, if you're a Michigan fan, why do you care? I mean, this guy won you a national championship. He's moved on. You have your new head coach. Just don't touch Michigan. If you ask me, if you're a Michigan fan, just don't touch Michigan. Jim Harbaugh is never coming back to college football. The worst thing that can happen to him is the NFL says, well, we're going to give him a suspension because he's got a 4-year show cause. And I guess there was a 1-year suspension there if he comes back. But again, he's not coming back. I don't think there's any way the NFL is going to suspend Jim Harbaugh for an entire year. I don't think there's any way that happens. But, we'll see what the NFL does. I don't act like I know what they do just because I don't cover the NFL. I'm familiar with it. I like to follow players from schools in the Big Ten and other schools that I like. But for the most part, I don't know how the NFL, does their business all the time. So I can't predict that accurately. If you ask me, Michigan wants as many of these coaches that are no longer at the school punished as possible. Push all the blame on them and have Connor Stallions, Chris Partridge, Denard Robinson, all these other guys, give them all the blame. Jesse Minter, whoever it is, all those guys that had their names mentioned, give them all the blame. So that way, nothing, like I said, comes back on Michigan. And even if something does come back, like on Sharon Moore has a level 2 violation here. He's not getting a 4-year show cause. He's not getting a 1-year suspension. That's not happening. At worst, you're looking at a 4-5 game suspension. I can't imagine they're going to do half of the regular season with 6 games. I guess it's possible if they get really, really mad, but those texts, it didn't sound like there was anything on those texts that Sharon Moore deleted that would implicate him with Connor Stallions. Was it a Good choice to delete him? Probably not if you didn't have any information on there. They're going to find him anyway, but it is what it is, and they eventually got the text, and it sounds like there's nothing in those texts that are really all that bad for Sharon Moore. So Sharon Moore might face some kind of suspension, but what we're looking at here is really not all that bad. Now, Michigan is facing a level 1 violation for noncompliance and efforts to hinder the investigation. Those weren't clearly outlined as like you broke these 2 rules, but those were the 2 definitions that they gave. Could there possibly be more in the notice of allegations? Because remember, all we got was information that Pete Thamel and Dan Murphy got in a draft from the NCAA. It doesn't say they got the whole draft. I don't think. I don't remember reading that. And so, even if they did get the whole draft, did they report the entire draft? We'll see. I tend to believe that's where it stopped with Michigan. If there's anything else, probably some more little minor recruiting things. But the way I look at it, ESPN wanted to get the most dirt on Michigan out there as they possibly could, so that way they could get a big story, get everybody going to their website, yeah, all that stuff. I don't think the NCAA has anything more on Michigan here. And with how they have been pushing the blame to all these coaches, I don't see how they could put anything else on Michigan here. So my question, naturally, was, okay, a level 1 violation for a school. What does that look like? What are the punishments that could come out of that? And so I looked up the punishments for a level 2 or a level 1 violation in the NCAA bylaws, and I'm going to share them with you guys. Here they are. If you're watching on video, you can see them. Now it's level 1 and level 2. So it's possible both here. But we're going to read through these and see which ones could pertain to Michigan. Prohibition against specified competition in sports during the regular season. Can't play certain teams. You can't play on these dates, whatever it might be. I don't see any reason why the NCAA would enforce that. Prohibition of all coaching staff members in the sport from involvement directly or indirectly in any coaching activities at the institution during the regular season. Now, that's a situation where we could look at Sharon Moore, right? That's what we're talking about with him. 3-game, 2-game, at most 6-game, which I don't even think it would get that high, but I'm just saying at most because that would be, I couldn't see it getting any higher than that. Suspension, he can't be in the in practices with the team and stuff like that. But again, if he even gets a suspension, it's a level 2 violation. This isn't level 1. Prohibition against institutional staff members serving on the board of directors, council, or other committees of the association for a prescribed period. So they're not on the NCAA board of directors committee. I don't know if this would affect Warden Manuel in the college football playoffs, but I mean, are Michigan fans really going to be that upset if Ward Manuel's not the college football playoff? What is he, director, chairman, whatever it's called? I don't think that really does anything. Requirement that the institution relinquish its voting privilege in the association for a prescribed period. That doesn't really matter. You can't vote. That's okay. Recommendation that the institution's membership in the association be suspended, terminated, or pursuant to bylaw. That sounds pretty major. I can't imagine that one would happen either, but I mean, like this yes, what Michigan did could be seen as very, very bad, but I don't think you're going to lose membership to the NCAA. And it says here recommendation, so they can't even do it on their own. I don't think there's any concern for that one. There is no way that Michigan is being kicked out of the NCAA. You kidding me? There's no way that the NCAA is recommending. However, I did see that poster on the message board talking about how Michigan should leave the NCAA. That's an interesting thought. I would love to see what would happen if a team, I'm not saying Michigan, I'm saying if a team tried to do that, how they would try to play. I don't know, what, Canada football teams? Who knows? Public reprimand and censor. Doesn't sound like a big thing. All right, G, this is the one that I think people are most scared of and that Ohio State fans seem to be clamoring the most for. But I say it doesn't really matter. Vacation of records in contest in which a student athlete competed while ineligible, including one or more of the following. Now, important distinction there. Which a student athlete competed while ineligible. All of this stuff is on the coaches. Yes, there's some recruiting violations there, but it's not like these players got paid under the table for something, which it's NIL. It's not really a big deal. There aren't any players who are ineligible here. Could you say a coach is ineligible? Could you possibly get away with that? That's not in the writing. So, I mean, unless they find some kind of loophole with seeing a player is ineligible or something, like I said, vacating wins probably not on the table. Again, it probably doesn't even matter. Like, you still went through the moment. You still saw everything happen. You still lived it out. It doesn't matter. Even if the NCAA did find some kind of loophole to vacate the national championship and all this other stuff, like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be that big of an impact. Yeah, rival fans are going to, get on you about it, but, I mean, just be honest. It's not going to do that much. Prohibition against television appearances in the institution of the sport in which the violation occurred. There is no way the Big Ten is letting this happen. I'll tell you that right now. There is no way the Big Ten is going to let the NCAA tell them they can't put Michigan on TV. That's not happening. Pursuant to a show cause order, disassociation of relation with a representative in the institution's athletic interests, including not accepting any assistance from the individual. So a lot of booster stuff here, coaches stuff there. Show cause stuff. I don't know if Ward Manuel could get a show cause, but I don't think Michigan fans would be too upset about that. Publicizing institution on probation in the NCAA website, in appropriate NCAA publications and NCAA championship game programs in all involved sports. Yeah, probation means nothing. It means they watch you closer. Congrats. They're on probation right now. It's literally not changed anything for Michigan. So what are you going to do? It doesn't do anything. Institutionally imposed suspension of a staff member from some or all athletically related duties for a specified period pursuant to show cause order for a situation in which the staff member engaged or condoned level 1 or level 2 violation or other penalties as appropriate. I mean, I guess the most terrifying one here is other penalties as appropriate, but Michigan, they've said they're going to go after them in court. Do I believe them? It's like what I said with Jim Harbaugh. I have to see it to believe it, right? They've threatened this before and they didn't go through with it. So I'll have to see it to believe it. But, I mean, really, there's not that much here that would be bad against Michigan. The majority of stuff here that they're going to do is against the coaches. The worst thing they could do, if you care about the trophies and the banners and all that stuff, is, which they just put the thing outside the stadium, the big sign, national champions. They just put that outside the stadium. So you can vacate the wins if you want, but like I said, it doesn't change the fact that people experience them, that the players were there, the players have the highlights, they have the celebrations. What are you going to do, scrub the internet of the highlights? It's not going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, Michigan's in the clear here, in my mind. I don't see anything here in the level 1 or level 2 violations that's going to do all that much damage to them. I mean, if somehow the NCAA did prohibit them from being on TV, yeah, that would be pretty bad. But the Big Ten's not going to let that happen. The Michigan is too much of a cash cow for the Big Ten. They're not going to let that happen. So, I mean, we'll see. Maybe there's something I'm missing here. If there's something you're noticing that I'm not, please do comment and let me know. But, I mean, if you're a Michigan fan, you're feeling pretty good at this point. Keep punishing Jim. Keep punishing Chris Partridge and Jesse Minter and Denard Robinson. Keep punishing all these people. Because guess what? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to them. Keep Sharon Moore clean. That's all that matters. And even if Sharon Moore does get suspended, 3 games? I mean, Jim Harbaugh was suspended 6 games last year, and they won the national championship. So, does it really matter? 12-team playoffs. So what? You lose to Texas? You can still go through and play the rest of the Big Ten and just be just fine. So, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Let me know if you have a different thought. I would be interested to hear that. But let's take a break really fast, and we'll come back and we'll talk about some Michigan defense. All right. Jaishawn Barham, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I know that my name pronunciation is awful. He flashes for Michigan. He has been appearing on a number of lists lately. A number of lists have looked at Barham and said that he is going to be a really good player for Michigan this year, which, if you know anything about Michigan's defense, this is fantastic news for them. The secondary should be very good. Will Johnson leading them. And the defensive line is one of the best in the nation and one of the best in the Big Ten, if not the best in the Big Ten. With Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, I mean, their starters are now the same defensive linemen that were on the field for that final play against Alabama when they just stuffed Jalen Milroe. So, obviously a great group to have back. But for me, the biggest question on this defense is the linebackers. And the fact that Barham, if you believe what's coming out of Ann Arbor right now, is going to be a huge piece for this team to be that missing link, to be that missing piece for them. Let's look at some history. Top 5 linebacker in the Big Ten in pressures with less than 500 snaps. Now, I'm not saying all of them have less than 500. He would be second if it was only players with less than 500 snaps. But he was top 5 in the Big Ten in pressures, QB pressures, as a linebacker, top 5. That's super impressive. The least amount of snaps in the top 5, or in the top 3, I apologize, was Abdul Carter, who had 588. Number 4 and number 5 both had less than 500 snaps, and they were very, very good. Only Abdul Carter and Mame, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, Njongmeta from Wisconsin, have more pressures, 41, than Barham in the last 2 years. Barham has 41 pressures in the last 2 years, and only Abdul Carter and Njongmeta from Wisconsin, only they have more pressures than him the past 2 years. So Barham, who has played in not a great Maryland defense here lately, has been fantastic and been doing things really, really well. In addition to that, he was a true freshman All-American honors in 2022 and 2-time All-Big Ten honorable mention. So he's not made the All-Big Ten team yet, but he has been mentioned both years as a freshman and a sophomore. Let's just look at the facts here. Wink Martindale has found his dangerous blitzer. This is what Wink Martindale wants to do. He wants to be able to blitz. He wants to have blitzes happen that are exotic and are going to confuse your defensive line. We're talking twists. We're talking, pressure from one side. We're talking disguising the blitz so it looks like this guy's coming, but the other guy's coming instead. We're talking blitz off the edge. We're talking corner blitz. I mean, we're talking all kinds of blitzes. Nothing is off the table for this guy. And so to give him a piece that is one of the most dangerous blitzers in the Big Ten is only going to amplify this defense even more. If Michigan wins the Big Ten this season, which is not off the table, I know a lot of people are saying, that win total is 9.5 or 9. I think I might have moved. I don't think it's off the table that Michigan could win the Big Ten this year. Now, they would have to kind of sneak into the Big Ten title game because I think they have some tough opponents with Oregon and Ohio State on their schedule, but they could still sneak into the Big Ten championship game. And who knows? Maybe they just go undefeated altogether. Maybe Sharon Moore doesn't get a suspension. They just go undefeated. I find that a little bit harder to believe with how much they lost on offense. But if we're being honest, This defense is going to be fantastic. Will Johnson is going to lead this defense. He's going to be awesome. Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are going to clog up the middle every single time. The only thing you have to worry about is that Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant haven't played a ton of snaps in their career because they have switched out that defensive line so much. So the question is, will Michigan have the defensive line that they can swap the snap count as much as they have in the past? I think they have some young players behind the other players in the defensive line who are hungry and who are going to play well. We'll see. We still need to see it first. We've seen these guys who are on the defensive line right now. We know they're fantastic. And we know that Jaishawn Barham is going to be a fantastic blitzer. He's going to get to the quarterback. If nothing else, he's going to pressure the quarterback. News in Ann Arbor, the Sam Webb, the very well-known Michigan insider reporter, he compared Barham to Devin Bush and said he could be one of the best linebackers in Michigan history. Now, that's a super high bar. Okay, that's super high. I don't know if I believe one of the best linebackers in Michigan history, but Sam Webb's the one there watching the practices, seeing it happen. So maybe he knows something I don't. He probably does. But we'll see. I mean, if Barham can be as good as Sam Webb has talked about him to be, this is going to be the number one defense in the nation. Michigan has a very real possibility to have the number one defense in the nation. The only way that could be spoiled, if Barham, like I said, is as good as they say he is if the offense just completely crumbles. But we're going to talk about the offense here in just a minute because we have some more players to get to. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back. All right, 10 Big Ten football players set to break out in 2024. Here are my list. Now, this isn't in any rankings. This isn't in any order. I'm not like trying to leave guys off or anything like that. These are just the first 10 players that really came to my mind as players who will most likely break out, or they're a big name that is expected to break out in 2024. Again, no rankings or anything to this. So if your guy is listed like 6, don't be, upset. It's not that he's 6 most likely. I'm just putting together 10 players. Here they are. All right. The running back from Minnesota, Darius Taylor. If you do not know Darius Taylor, you will know him this year. Provided he does not get injured again, he is going to be fantastic for Minnesota. 738 yards in 4 games where he had 20-plus carries. Now, he played 6 games, but in 4 games, he had 20-plus carries. And he had 738 yards, 184.3 yards per game. Holy crap. 184.3 yards per game in those 4 games that he had 20-plus carries. In those 4 games, he also had 5 touchdowns, 0 fumbles, 5 rushing touchdowns, 0 fumbles, and 22 rushes of 10 yards or more. PJ Fleck went out and found one of, if not the best, FCS quarterback out there. And he really gave him this fantastic running back who burst onto the scene last year, got hurt, so not a lot of people remember him. But if he can put together a full season this year, and he can, he's not going to put up numbers. He's not going to rush for an 884.3 yards per game. It's just not going to happen. But if he can do something even comparable to this, it's going to be fantastic if he can be out there the entire year. All right, let's go to the defensive tackle, Jay Toya from UCLA. Started 24 games the past 2 years. So you say, well, JR, how is he going to be a breakout candidate? Well, all of these guys played less than 400 snaps. And Toya played 393. So he was just hitting that ceiling there. But he played 393 snaps last year. He started his 24 games that he's been at UCLA, transferred in from USC. And he is an incredible athlete for his size. Great athleticism, great burst. He's going to be fantastic. He will break out in his stats is what I predict. He had 28 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and only 1 sack last year. I don't think the sacks told the story of who he actually was. But I think this year he gets more tackles. He gets more tackles for losses. Maybe 1 or 2 more sacks. He might not put up, these amazing sack numbers. But once he shores up his tackling, that was his big issue the past 2 years. He missed 7 tackles and 6 tackles the past 2 years. So 13 tackles combined. Missed 13 tackles. That's too much. Once he shores up his tackling ability and he makes every tackle he gets his hands on, he's going to be just fine. And I think that he's going to make that adjustment this year. Next one, Zachariah Branch, wide receiver, punt returner, kick returner for USC. He had 361 snaps last year. That does include special teams because he was out there so much. He is a fantastic punt returner. One of the best punt returners in the nation, if not the best. Kick returning leaves a little to be desired, but those numbers are so crazy with how many touchbacks are there, fair catches, that kind of stuff. I don't really hold that against him as much. I look at more punt returning personally than kick returning. But he's starting this year, and his return skills are going to translate to his wide receiver abilities. And the reason I'm so confident in that is because Lincoln Riley is... he just has to be foaming at the mouth with how excited he is to use this kid, with how fearless he is, and how fast he is. In 2023, he wasn't bad. He had 320 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wasn't a starter. 20 of his 44 targets came in the last 4 games. So in the last 4 games, the last quarter of the season, you really saw Caleb Williams begin to look for him more. Now, the bowl game's in there as well. So Miller Moss was looking for him too. But nearly half of his targets were in the last 4 games of the season. I think that he was starting to find his way. I think he was developing chemistry with the quarterbacks. And I think that Miller Moss is going to have a fantastic option on the outside or in the slot. All right, my next one, Aiden Childs, quarterback, Michigan State. He had 100 snaps last year, so well under the 400 mark. And in 2022, he was the 58th overall prospect according to 24/7. So that is a very, very high prospect for Michigan State to get their hands on. He comes over with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State, going to for sure be the starter. And in 2023, like I said, only 100 snaps. And this wasn't just against weak competition. This wasn't just when Oregon State was blowing people out and he got it. 300 plus passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. Sorry about that. 100 plus rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, if this guy can put up nearly, 2,000 passing yards and have an equivalent rushing number to what he had before, this guy could put together 2,000 passing yards and 600 rushing yards, and that would be fantastic for Michigan State. Or give him 1,500 passing yards, give him 800, 900 rushing yards. That'd be fantastic as well. Aiden Childs is a true dual threat quarterback. If he can stay healthy, he is going to be fantastic for this Michigan State team. And he is going to accelerate the improvement for this team. Now, he's only a sophomore. He is young. But he could seriously break out and be considered one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this conference next year if he does break out the way I think he could. We'll see. Might not happen. But I really like his skill set, and I think that he could do some crazy things. Another guy I really like his skill set, and he is just absolutely crazy, is J.J. Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. Wide receiver, number 1 overall recruit in the 2024 class. I mean, I'm pretty sure every service had him number 1. He will be starting for Ohio State. And when Ohio State has recruited as well as they have at wide receiver, and you come in as a true freshman, you're going to be one of the star wide receivers on this team. He's not just going to start. He's going to be the X. He is going to be one of the primary targets on this team. That speaks to how amazing he is. Now, Ohio State is a little down at wide receiver this year. I don't mean like the players aren't as good. I just mean the players aren't as proven. Carnell Tate is most likely the number 2, and he caught, 200 yards last year. It's good news for Ohio State that Emeka Egbuka came back because they'd have some real inexperience at wide receiver. But I mean, no one in Ohio State's secondary can stop him one-on-one. That's what Jim Knowles said. Jim Knowles said nobody can stop him one-on-one. Well, he basically said they can stop him, but he's a threat for everybody trying to stop him one-on-one. So, obviously, other corners have stopped him in coverage, but you don't see that out of a freshman every single day, especially the corners Ohio State has, which could be argued to be one of the best secondaries in the country. Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, Jordan Hancock, Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom. These are all high-quality names, high-quality players who have played college football now for a good amount of time. And Jeremiah Smith is taking care of him. So it's going to be crazy. We'll see what he can do. First ever freshman to be named Iron Buckeye. If you don't know what Iron Buckeye is, that's like the award they give out in the offseason for doing an exceptional job in the weight room and being a leader, getting other players to the weight room as well. First ever true freshman at Ohio State. There's been a lot of really good true freshmen, and he's the first one. So excellent stuff from him. Zane Durant, defensive tackle, Penn State. He had 327 snaps last year, almost took the starting role 2 years ago, his freshman year. All Big Ten, honorable mention. He has played all 26 games the past 2 seasons. He started 11 games last year, so not the entire season, just one game where he didn't start it. And his 2023 stats were 22 tackles and 3 sacks. Listen, Zane Durant is fantastic. He's powerful. He is quick off the line of scrimmage. He uses his hands well. I mean, this is a defensive tackle that has a very bright future. And once he finally gets the snaps, similar to Jay Toya, 327. It's not like he wasn't playing a lot last year. But if he has the season that I think he could have, he could be recognized as one of the best defensive tackles in the nation. And if he does come back next year, which I don't know if he will, probably won't, because he's going to be so good this year, he could be recognized as a Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant. Probably not Kenneth Grant. He's a little freakier, but Mason Graham type of guy. I mean, that is the type of player that I could see Zane Durant turn into. Not turn, but recognition-wise. Miller Moss, quarterback, USC, 2023. His snaps were 108. He had 6 touchdown passes in the bowl game. I think everybody knows that. If you talk to any USC fan for longer than 5 minutes, they'll tell you if you don't know. But a 90.7 PFF grade on 66 dropbacks. Here's the part I was most impressed about. Against the blitz. So, right, he's a young quarterback. That should be the time when he's most concerned, most freaked out. No. 80.6% adjusted completion percentage. That's insane. For a guy who hasn't even been the starter for a full year yet, or isn't even starting in his first season, 80.6% adjusted completion percentage against the blitz is fantastic. 91.7 PFF grade in that. His PFF numbers are they're fantastic. He had a fantastic final game against Louisville. You can argue about the competition there. I get it, but still, how many quarterbacks that we know are really good get in their very first game and they just crap the bed, especially against an opponent from a Power 4 conference? Answer is a lot of them do. Miller Moss didn't. Miller Moss didn't do it all year when he got in. So, very impressive. I think Miller Moss is going to be a breakout player this year. Jordan James, running back, Oregon. Similar to Darius Taylor here. The difference is Jordan James had an entire season, and he never had 20-plus carries. He never had 20-plus snaps. 0 games with 20-plus snaps for Jordan James. I thought he was better than Bucky Irving at times last year. And Bucky Irving was a 4th-round pick. So, we'll see. But in 2023, he had 0 games with 20-plus snaps, and he managed to get 700-plus yards, 7.9 yards per carry. That is ridiculous. 11 touchdowns and 0 fumbles. This year, he's finally going to get the full-time load. He's finally going to be able to be that guy for the team, and he's going to be fantastic. He's going to be one of the best running backs in the nation. He's going to be one of the leading rushers, if not the leading rusher in the Big Ten. You have a lot of really good players out there. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, Darius Taylor. You have a lot of really good guys out there. I think Ohio State and Penn State are going to hinder their guys from being stat leaders just because of the way those guys are going to run together. But I think Jordan James can be the featured back this year. I was on an Ohio State podcast, and one of the guys, he ranked Jordan James, it was either number 1 or number 2 for next year. Just absolutely insane. This guy, he didn't get the workload that I feel like he deserved last year. But when he got out there, he was fantastic. Another guy who was super productive when he got out there, Samaj Morgan, wide receiver, Michigan. People kind of clown Samaj a little bit because he likes to talk, and he would talk even after games when he had negative receiving yards. But check this out. He was targeted on 39% of his snaps. 39%. That's crazy. He had receptions on 29.3% of his snaps. 12 of his 22 receptions were a first down last year. The guy has made the most of his opportunities, and one of the reasons he has is because every time he went in the game, Michigan was looking to use him. He wasn't just a decoy. Now, he was used as a decoy sometimes, but they were looking to use him. And so you might be saying, oh, well, he's just a screen merchant. You know, he just catches the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Okay. Really good receiving back that Michigan has, Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards had 15 receptions for 66 yards behind the line of scrimmage last year. Samaj Morgan had 14 receptions for 73 yards behind the line of scrimmage last year. He's able to catch the ball. He's able to do some good stuff with it in his hands when he finally gets it. I think Samaj Morgan is going to be fantastic this year. He is going to be a piece for this Michigan offense that is going to have them be better than I think some might think they're going to be. I'm not picking Michigan to win the Big Ten or anything like that. My pick for that is still Ohio State. But I think Michigan is going to be better than some people give them credit for if Michigan can utilize this offense in such a way that uses every single player's strengths. And they have enough players with really, really strong strengths that they should be able to do that. Offensive line is the biggest question mark for me for this Michigan offense. Maybe we'll get into them a little bit more. But last thing I would say on that, you got Sherrod Moore as your head coach. Offensive line has been fantastic under him. Every single year has been at Michigan. So if your question mark is what's been your biggest strength the past few years, you should be okay. We'll see. Last breakout player, number 10, Dylan Raiola, quarterback, Nebraska. How can you not make the guy that dresses like Patrick Mahomes? He cosplays to the hotel as Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, did you guys see that picture? I should have loaded it up for you. It just cracked me up so much. He dressed literally, I literally thought it was Patrick Mahomes. I was like, what is Patrick Mahomes doing in Nebraska gear? He went to Texas Tech. Listen, I try not to put too high of expectations on freshmen. But when you choose to dress like Patrick Mahomes, man, you put the expectations there. And if he can live up to him, by all means, dude, go for it. I think it'd be a fantastic story. I think it would be a fun thing to cover if Nebraska has fantastic quarterback play this year. I would love to talk about a Nebraska team with really good quarterback play this year. He is the highest ranked signee in Nebraska modern recruiting history. Here's what his center, Ben Scott, had to say about him. He's like the first one in the building, last one to leave, because he's always watching film, looking at sheets of play. First guy there, last one to leave. He knows how to be a leader, and he knows how to rally his team. And this is my other thing. Call me crazy. The biggest knock I've heard on him is, well, he's a freshman. He's coming in for the first time. Didn't he go to like 3 or 4 different high schools in high school? I think it was 4. I wrote down 3. I think it was 4 different high schools. I think he switched high schools every single year. Going to a new place, learning a playbook, and becoming a leader and playing well, it has not become foreign to him. Yes, it's college football. There's going to be a learning curve there, but I don't think the learning curve here is going to be playing at a new place. He's done this the past 4 years. The learning curve is just going to be learning the game. And I think that Nebraska seems very intent on fixing those turnover issues. And I think that that's going to be an emphasis for them. I'm not going to pick a Nebraska to go to a bowl until it happens. It's another one of those things. Wait and see until it happens. But they are very likely to go to a bowl this year. And if they do, Dylan Raiola is going to be a big part of that. We're going to be right back, and then we'll talk about the Nebraska defensive line. All right, Nebraska's defensive line. This is arguably one of the top 5 defensive lines in the Big Ten, and to me, it's the most underrated defensive line in the nation. This is, to me, a defensive line that, because they're in the Big Ten, where there are so many great defensive lines, you got Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State. I mean, you have all these fantastic defensive lines. I'm missing one. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa. Oh, Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a fantastic defensive line too. But I think Nebraska has one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated, defensive lines in all of college football coming into this season. They have retained all of their defensive linemen from last year. No transfer portal, no graduation, which played a crucial role in the Huskers achieving a top 10 run defense nationally. Top 10 run defense nationally. And a big part of it was because of that defensive line. They also finished top 25 in the FBS for sacks per game, 2.67, which also was good enough for 3rd in the Big Ten. See, guys, Nebraska football hasn't had a player reach more than 6 sacks since Kahil Davis had 8 in 2019. I don't know if they're going to have a player with more than 6 sacks this year. If anybody it is, it's probably Jamari Butler. Maybe the polar bear, Nash Hutmatcher. Sorry if I said that wrong. But guys, this is going to be a fantastic defensive line. And one of the reasons why is because they are going to be 8 or 9 guys deep. With how they were able to retain so much and continue to bring in players, they're going to be 8 or 9 guys deep. Now, I'm going to mention 7 guys here, but they have 2 or 3 guys that I think are vying for opportunities to play and actually get playing time next year. I think that Matt Rule would be willing to dig into the 3 deep in certain situations for this team. Maybe the biggest games? Probably not. Probably go with the 2 deep. But I have 7 guys here. And I'm not even mentioning the Jack guys. I'm not even mentioning Herman and Prince. I don't even tell me to try to say that name. Ty Robinson. He's going to be their starting defensive end. 561 snaps last year. Only 1 sack, but 28 QB pressures. Fantastic. He was fantastic in the run game. He's a fantastic defensive end. Jamari Butler, 359 snaps, 5.5 sacks. All right, so he almost got to that 6 sack mark from 2019. But Jamari Butler, he is a force to be reckoned with. 26 QB pressures. So 5.5 sacks, 26 QB pressures. He is a menace. You do not want to be lined up across from him. Nose tackle, or the, I guess not always nose tackle, but the defensive tackle. Nash Hutmatcher. Like I said, the polar bear. Imagine your name is the polar bear. That's your nickname. That's fantastic. Anybody whose nickname is the polar bear, that's fantastic. 504 snaps last year as a defensive tackle. 4.5 sacks, 23 QB pressures. Fantastic. Their 2 deep for their defensive ends are going to be Elijah Judy, who had 158 snaps last year. He had 0 sacks, but 8 QB pressures. And Cameron Lindart, defensive end, 266 snaps, freshman last year. Guys, he's going to be fantastic as well. He is going to push for starter snaps next year, or this coming year. 3 sacks, 11 QB pressures. Like I said, freshman All-American recognition last year. I cannot wait to watch Cameron Linhart, however you pronounce it. He's going to be fantastic. He is going to be a lot of fun. The speed in which he has off the edge is fantastic. The way he's able to combo his power with his speed at such a young age, only being a freshman, he's only going to continue to get better. He's only going to get stronger in the weight room there at Nebraska. I'm so excited to watch Cameron. Riley Van Poppel, another defensive tackle, 113 snaps. He had a half a sack last year and 2 QB pressures. So, not the most impressive numbers from him in the world. And then your defensive end / defensive tackle, guy that can kind of play either way, who I think is going to make a jump this season. A lot of good stuff coming out of Nebraska fall camp about him. James Williams. Only played 4 games last year, but he was good when he was in. And the coaches are talking about some really, really good stuff from him in training camp. So, my most underrated defensive line in the nation is the Nebraska defensive line. Returning all these starters, the possibility of going 8 or 9 guys deep. You have the usage of MJ Sherman and Prince to be able to use those guys as a jack position, which if you don't know the jack position, it's somebody that can play up on the line of scrimmage, but they can also go back to being a linebacker. So they play a 3-3. If he's up on the line of scrimmage, you're playing a 4-2. If he's playing back, you're playing a 3-3. It's very deceptive. It's very interesting the way they're able to do it. And I think that it's one of the best ways you can run defense in the modern era of college football. I think that is one of the defenses. If you have a jack position player, it is one of the defenses that is the most difficult for young quarterbacks to read and young quarterbacks to know, just because in college football there are so many reads with certain players. See the defensive end, read him. If you've got a jack who's roaming around, is he linebacker, is he defensive end? Really difficult. Really, really difficult for young quarterbacks to be able to see. That's my show for tonight, guys. I appreciate all of you watching, and gals, I guess, if you're a gal and you're watching as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please do tell a friend. Let somebody know about the Big Ten Huddle. And like I said, if you have any comments about anything you heard, let me know. If you have suggestions for how the show can get better, if you even just have suggestions for topic ideas, you want me to talk about best secondaries, you want me to talk about this player in general, kind of like I did with Barnum here, let me know. I would love to just keep putting out good content for you guys. Next episode, we'll have some good stuff, and we'll go through the comments. So if you want your comment featured in the next episode, like I said, comment. And I appreciate you all for watching.